so now I want to walk through some of the stuff about Rails, kind of go over some of the homework for this upcoming week. Can everyone see that? Is that big enough for everyone? Oops. Okay. Cool. So hopefully you all have access to the assignment for the upcoming week. So in the pre-work, you did a lot of things, which is great. And now the goal is kind of go through it piece by piece and really understand the concepts and what's going on to kind of give you the full building blocks to build out a Rails app. It's going to be a similar process, though. You're going to have your own assignment, submit it to Heroku, modify the README. So for the assignment, we're going to be actually making a website for just a restaurant. So there's README, similar thing. We're going to copy that into our repository. So I'm recording. Great. So let's go ahead and create our app. So we're gonna do Rails new, right? Very simple. Create a new app. And again, I'm recording this lecture. I'll post it online, so don't worry about having to write down everything that I do. So this one is called a restaurant. So I'm gonna call mine restaurant just Tex-Mex. I'm a big fan of Mexican food. Vietnamese comes a close second. So we'll call it Tex-Mex. And if I did just this, it would create the default database, right? Which is what? Exactly, SQLite. So we want to use Postgres. So we can just do -d Postgres, right? Or you can even do, a lot of times there's shortcuts, that's shortcut, or you can do, database equals, either one's the same, doesn't really matter. So we'll go ahead and run that. It would create a lot of things for us. A lot of things, so here's our README file, right? Creates a Git repository for us, fantastic. Here it's adding in some style, so application.css, which is style for the whole app. It's adding in just a base model, adding in some basic views, some JavaScript. These come standard with all new Rails apps. A lot of configuration files, some database files here. Lib is mainly more for tasks and scripts, and then public are just like public pages, so 404 not found pages, and then a whole bunch of test files. It also ran it for us bundle install, which is our management system for libraries, and so it kind of went ahead and fetched a lot of different things that come standard. Fantastic. So now if we go into it, right, we're into our repository, great, and we say git status, fantastic. Let's go ahead and open it up. Cool. Can you guys see that? Okay. So this is the old README. We'll go ahead and remove that and add in the new README file. This is Coder Restaurant. So I'm going to say here, right? Tex-Mex. Fantastic. This is my name. The rest we don't know yet. Cool. So this is just our initial, and so we're also gonna try to practice good Git commands. So it's very good to commit your history often. That way, if you're looking back, you can kind of see your history, see what you've worked on. Each chunk of code is in its own commit, so you really can kind of see what's been worked on. If you need to revert a commit, you don't have to revert everything. You just have to revert those that specific action. And if you're working with someone else, it's kind of good just to see what they're working on. So we're going to say, git add all, great. And we're going to go ahead and commit that. And this is just our initial commit, right? Fantastic. So now if we look at the log, we see great, initial commit, up to date, cool. So we got our most basic Rails app running. Now let's see what happens. So let's go ahead and actually I'm going to get into it here. And we're going to go ahead and run Rails server. So Rails server, right, goes ahead and kicks off our server for us. So you can respond to requests. You can also just do Rails S. There's many ways to do shortcuts in Rails, and this is one of them. So if we start just a basic Rails server, we've done very little so far, right? We've just created a new app, committed it to history. Great. It says we're up and running. We're on localhost port 3000. So let's go ahead and try that out. Here we're on localhost 3000, and congratulations, you're on Rails. And so if you run just 3 commands, you already have a Rails app. You're up and running. Just the standard default view. Now let's start actually go ahead and add things into our app. So first thing is to create 2 pages, a menu and a contact us page, right? And these are just basic information for the user if they want to navigate to, what to see. So we're going to go ahead and start adding in some roots. So if we go to config roots.rb, these are all of our roots that the Rails app responds to. Right now there's nothing here. So if you were to go to the local host, right, and start typing in some roots, home, it would say, no root matches /home, right? Because we have nothing yet that's listening for that root. So we're going to need to add in some roots. So we want to add in just a root path, right? And this just says when we first get to the app, redirect us to the index page. But if we were to just do this and nothing else, right, what would happen? If I refresh, what's going to happen? Right? It'll say uninitialized constant home controller. So what happened is it recognized the root. It said, great, the root exists, but there's nowhere to route it to. There's nothing that's listening for that action. And if you want to check out your roots, you can actually go to /rails/info, and here it tells us all of our roots. Right now we have a root path, right, just slash, controller action, so it's looking for the controller home, the action index. That doesn't exist, and so it throws an error. So let's go ahead and create that. So when I say Rails generate controller, and same thing, shortcuts for everything, so we can even just say Rails G controller, right? And we're going to say home, because that's the controller we want to care about. And for now, we want an index route, right? We want to be able to listen to index action. And we also want, let's do the contact us route. So we'll go ahead and create that. And this is part of the Rails magic, right? It knows that how to set these up, how to set up a controller for us, how to set the routes. And it'll create a bunch of files for us that we can then use and manipulate. And usually this is a pretty quick operation. I wonder if I'm slowing my computer down. Turn off that and try it again. Great, cool. So it created a bunch of things for us. So what exactly did it create for us? Well, it created 2 routes for us. Get, contact us, and index. It created some views. So the view folder, home, has now 2 views, index and contact us. And that's because we supplied those up here as arguments. Some test files, some helpers. Great. So now let's go ahead and try it again, right? Now let's see if we go back. Great. Now we have our basic home index, right? So we have a controller. We have a view. We haven't modified them. We just kind of created them out of the box. So if we go into our routes again, we'll see now there's get home index, get home contact us, and it routes us to the index. Let's check out our home controller, right? Our home controller now has 2 actions, index and contact us, and they don't have to do anything, but at least they're there and they respond, with the according view. So Rails knows that if you route to the index view, index action, right, it'll return home.index/index.html.rb, right? This is the index file that we saw right here, right? Same thing. So it knows to return this view with that action. So great. So now let's go ahead and start to modify this. So we have our Tex-Mex restaurant. And we're going to want to add some links. Right? So we're going to say link to, and we're going to say menu. And for this one, we're going to say the menu path, which we're going to define. And let's go ahead and make it like that. Sweet. So we have our links, right? Link to, and we have one more link to contact us. And we're going to say contact us path. Now, what exactly are those? Let's see. So let's go ahead and refresh. And it says, undefined local variable or method menu path. Right, so we've defined this term here, menu path. If we look at our routes, which we go here, so we go Rails info, we'll look at our routes, right? Here are the names of the routes. We have the home index path and the home contact us path, but we have no menu path. So that's why it throws an error. So for now, let's just go ahead and say home contact us path, and we'll go ahead and come back to these and modify them to the right place once we need them. But if we go ahead and refresh now, great, basic up and running. These would take us to the contact us page. Fantastic, right? So just like that, we have some links taking us to the contact us page. Let's make it a little nicer though. So we're going to make it class. Make it a button, right? And this just gives it a little nicer than just a link. Something just to make it a little nicer. Cool. So what I haven't done yet, say it again. Exactly. Good call. So, yep, so they're not being enforced yet, right? They're just here. So that's fantastic. So let's go ahead and add in Bootstrap, right? So we're going to look for the Bootstrap gem. Cool. So Bootstrap Ruby gem. For some reason, there's still an alpha, so they don't. You're gonna have to specify where to get the gem from. So we'll add that into our gem file. Let's go ahead and say Bootstrap. Right? Great. Anytime we run anytime we add the gem file, we want to update it. So we'll go ahead and run bundle install. You also just run bundle, same thing, and that'll run it for us. In the meantime, there's also a few more instructions. So it wants us to ensure that Sprockets Rails is at least this version. So we'll check that after it's installed. We ran bundle install, great. They asked that we update our application.scss file and include this app bootstrap. Let's go ahead and do that now. So application is actually right now just.css. So we'll delete it all and add in import bootstrap. Great. And now we need to rename it. So if you see here, it asks us to rename it from CSS to SCSS, and that's just using Sass. So I'm going to say, I'm going to move it. Oops. Right, so it's there, and we're just going to do it the nice and simple way. Great. We want to confirm that it got moved, or renamed rather. We can see now it's SCSS, fantastic. Finally, it says we also need jQuery Rails. So starting with Rails 5.1, which we're using in this class, they removed jQuery by default. If you want it in, you have to just specify it in as a gem. And that's because we're starting to work more with rich JavaScript frameworks, so React, Ember, and Angular. A lot of them have their own way of using Rails or of using jQuery. But for now, we want it, so we're going to go ahead and add that in. So let's go back to our gem file, and we'll go ahead and specify jQuery Rails as well, and then we'll run bundle again. Cool. And earlier it asked us to look at Sprockets Rails, right? It said verify that's at least a certain version. So we'll just do that real quickly. All right, we'll just say gem list. It's version 3.2, which is fantastic. So it's more than what we need for the specifications here. And the last part is adding in dependencies to the JS side. So it asks that we add in these three to application.js, which we'll do. So required tree isn't really all that useful, so we'll delete it. And we'll do application.js. Great. So because we ran bundle, that means we added some new gems. We're going to have to go ahead and restart the server. You notice in the gem file there's a gem called Spring. So Spring is great because anytime you make a change to Ruby and Rails, you don't have to kill the app and start it again. It'll automatically update. The one exception is like route changes and gem changes. So if you add in a new gem, you have to restart the server so it gets the latest update. but normally you don't need to restart the server. So great, server's back up and running. Now let's go ahead and see what that looks like. If we refresh, see here, it's rendering the pages. Cool, fantastic. So now we have our basic app, and like you're saying, now that we've Bootstrap actually installed, we have some buttons here that will take us to basic pages. Great. Are there any questions so far? Sweet, so we'll keep going. So you notice here that the route is kind of home/contact us. It's a little wonky, right? Maybe we want just contact us, right? A little cleaner. As of now, if we did that, there's no route. But let's go ahead and change it so it defines it that way. So we'll go back to our route, and right now you see home contact us. We're going to go ahead and route that to a specific controller action. So we're going to say let's route that to home contact us, and index is index. Great. So now let's go ahead and try again. Right? If we do this though, what's going to happen? It works. Right? So it knows how to route it with the right action because we told it, even though it's home/contact us, go to the home controller, action contact us, which is the same as we used before. And if you notice now in the URL, still contact us. Oops. I didn't modify the path. So if we go back to the index HTML, we have home contact us. We'll just say contact us path. And refresh. And now throws an error because it says there's no route contact us path. So let's go ahead and take a look at our routes. And it still has the old one. Restart. And it's still there. There you go. Thank you. So, okay, so now we route it to home contact us. Thank you. And if we refresh, now it's throwing an error because home contact us path here is not defined and we linked to it in menu. So we'll make that quick change as well on the menu side. Great. And we'll refresh, and now we're up and running. And now if we go to contact us, now it is just /contact us to our normal view. Fantastic. So we added Bootstrap. We got just basic UI looking. Now let's go ahead and actually start to build out this page, right? So now the page is just the generic page that came with it. We'll start to actually change it and add information to it. So we're going to go to contact us HTML, and let's go ahead and add in some information. So contact us, and let's go ahead and add in some other things. So going back to the README, there's two pages, menu and contact us, and it asks to see address and phone number on the contact us page, as well as a basic Google map. So we'll go ahead and do those now. So back on our contact us page, we'll say, add in some rows just to keep it looking clean. Cool. I'm going to add in cool. So now we have some rows, and here we can start to put in the address. So we'll just define the address, and we'll say, great. We'll put in just, some address. I'll put an address back in San Francisco, just one that I know. We'll add some breaks. And it'll ask for a phone number, so we'll just throw in a phone number as well. Cool. So now let's go ahead and refresh and see what it looks like. And now we just have, you know, very basic. The address is up and running. So make a little bit of formatting. We can play around with it. We can, even add in some cards or whatnot, make it look a little nicer. But let's just, keep going for now. We can add style in later. More care about the functionality, make things look nice. Will come, secondary. So the second part, going back to the README, was address and phone number. Great, we've done that part. Next part is the basic Google Maps. And so we'll add that part in here. Let's go ahead and get that. And actually, Google makes it really easy to embed. You can just embed the iframe directly, and it gives us a nice kind of way to do that. So we have an address here in San Francisco. We'll click Share, embed map, and it comes with the iframe. It comes with some formatting already in it, and you kind of can choose how to format it. So we'll go ahead and copy that. And if we paste it here, you see a lot of bunch of stuff. But the important stuff here is at the end. Is all the formatting. So right now it has some parameters on how it's going to look. Let's go ahead and refresh our page and see what that looks like. Oops, didn't show up. Make sure I saved it. There we go. I'm zoomed in quite a bit. Cool. So we have it here. Great. Looks pretty nice. One thing now we notice is there's really no way to navigate. Having to kind of use the keyboard to get around, or the mouse, or modify the routes. So let's add in a nav bar, which a lot of you did in the pre-work, which is great. So we're going to go ahead and look for a bootstrap nav bar. We'll just add that in. Fantastic. Here it is. And so we can add it into our, this is our application.html, which is included on every page. So the stuff that gets put in here is included on every page, and you'll see here the yield, which means it gives whatever the controller defines, and the view that the controller passes back, will get put into the yield. And so right now, all of the text is on the far left, because there's nothing that's really formatting it. If we said div class equals container, right? Put this inside of that, and then we refresh, right? It'll move things more towards the middle. Go back to the home page, and again, things are moved over, which is nice. So now we also want to add in a nav bar, and what we could just do is paste it here. That's our nav bar, great, right? And let's just see, just copy and paste. Great. We have a nav bar. Looks like it's responsive for mobile. But right, this file is included on every page, and if we start to add in more things, this file can get very long. It can be kind of hard to see what's going on. It's pretty clunky. And so, what's great about Rails is it offers what's called a partial, which is a section of a view. And so it really helps us to refactor and keep the code clean. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's move this into a partial so that we have it outside of this file itself. So I say render layouts navbar. Great. And so now we go ahead and need to find that file. And so we're going to create it. App use. We'll see layouts here, and there's nothing great, so we're going to say navbar, and it's html.erb, right, which is embedded Ruby. We'll go ahead and paste it, and with luck, it'll still show up. Great. So it's still there. Cool. So now at least we have, a navbar to kind of, navigate around. Get to contact us page. Great, we have some basic information. We're on our way. So checking back the README, can see basic Google Map on the contact us page. Fantastic, right? And we're trying to practice here good Git protocol. So see what we've done. Great, we've done a lot of stuff. We've added in some formatting, the contact us page. We'll add it all. We'll commit it. Add info to contact us page. Cool. So if we go ahead and git log that, we have two things. Fantastic. Initial commit and info to the contact us page. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and keep moving on. So now we say, all right, now we've done the kind of the contact us. That was just a simple adding in information to the JavaScript side. Let's go ahead and actually start to add in some models and start to show a menu. So we're going to create a menu page with 4 different sections, and we're going to attach food items to these sections. So you'll see here the next task is also add food items, and each food item should have certain tasks. And so for this now, we're going to go ahead and start to create a section model. So we're going to say Rails generate model, right? Same thing, you also can say Rails G model, a shortcut. And we're going to want a section. So we define it here. And what does a section really need? Well, we said we want 4 different sections. You kind of can see it back here: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and drinks. So we need a name. When we create these models, Rails gives us the automatic timestamps to create it at and update it at. So that's really all we need. And we want it to be a string, right? So we can say string. And if you leave it blank, by default, Rails will just create it as a name. So we say Rails generate model section name. Great. We'll go ahead and do that.
You said that if you don't specify the type, it's going to be a string.
Yeah. So this, right, I've done the exact same thing. If you want a text field, you have to specify text. And string is limited to a certain length, and text is infinite. Or if you wanted like an integer. But if you leave it without anything, it will create a string. So basically, what that command did for us is it created our model and it created our migration. And so let's go ahead and check those out before we run them. So we're going to check out our model, and the model exists. There's nothing in it so far. Great. And if we open up and check out the migration, we'll see here it creates table sections, the string name, and the timestamps. We can even pass in some parameters. So we could say, for example, default, none if we wanted to. We could say null, false, which would mean that the database table has to have a value. If it's an integer field or if it's a string, we can say limit, 10 if we wanted to limit it in size. Final option, you say index true, which will go ahead and create an index on it in the database. In this case, we only have 4 sections. It's not necessary, so we don't need that. But you can do all that from the migration itself. Here's our migration. We're going to go ahead and run that, right? Rails DB migrate. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the database for us. And we didn't even create our database. So here we get an error, database does not exist, and that's because I forgot to run Rails DB create. So Rails DB create will go ahead and create our database for us. Great, now we have our database. We'll run migrate. And there we go. And to confirm it, we can take a look at schema.rb. This is just kind of a file that explains the schema of our current database. And we'll see here it has great, the string name, and the datetime fields and the migration. Fantastic. Alrighty. So now that we've kind of created this, we have this in our database. We have just a model with nothing in it. We want to go ahead and create some instances of this model, right? And we could, for example, we could do this via the command line. So earlier I showed you IRB, which is the interactive Ruby. You can even run a Rails console, which is a similar concept. It opens up an IRB, but with access to your Rails environment. So I have section, right? I can do section.count, and it'll actually go ahead and run a database query for me, asking for the number of rows in that table. And right now it says 0 because we have none. And so if we wanted to, we could go ahead and create, we could create some here. But let's say we want to create them in a repeatable process. We want a way to, create them both locally and on Heroku. So we're going to go ahead and use the db seeds file. So it's db/seeds. And in this file, you can go ahead and start to create things in the database. So we'll say, if section.count equals 0, let's go ahead and create some things. So we're going to say for some values. And earlier, this is the name syntax I was telling us about. we're going to say section create, name is name. And section.create will go ahead and create each one of those, which is fantastic. But if it doesn't, it'll keep going on, and we actually want to know if things are going to fail. So we're going to add in a bang here, and what a bang method does is the bang methods will do a hard failure. So if it hits a failure, it'll blow up and stop immediately, which we know it's a failure, as opposed to just a soft fail and just disappearing. And here, this would run for 2 values, breakfast and lunch. It will create them. We can keep adding in more. We can also do, and Rails has shortcuts for everything, so this just creates an array of strings, right? So we do dinner and drinks. And essentially what this right here does is it'll take each object, break it up, take the string, break it up by new line, and basically turn it into a string array. Great. So let's go ahead and run that command. So we're going to run Rails db seed, right, which will run that code that we just wrote. And it'll create for us. Great. But we didn't actually add any logging to it. How do we know if it actually worked? In this case, we'd have to actually go into the console, and we have to say, all right, section.count. All right, we have all. Great, we have 4 of them. Looks like they're all there. We didn't actually add in anything. So how do we know if it, so let's make it a little nicer. So maybe we can add some put statements, right? Running db seed. Great. Say creating section for name, right? And maybe we'll say else. If we already have things, we can just say you already have sections in the DB, right? Just kind of nice. So if we exit out and we're to run it again, Rails db seed, it'll find if there already are sections in the database, and it'll say, great, you already have sections in the database. We won't create more for you, which is kind of cool. So great. Now that we have these, we need to actually display them. Because if we go back to our app, and we click on the menu, right? Now we don't have a menu page yet. It's still routing us to the contact page. Let's go ahead and create that menu kind of page. So I'm actually going to go ahead and clear out all these files here. And we're going to go back to the home controller. The home controller, we have 2 actions, index and contact us. Let's go ahead and define a new one. I want to define menu, and it's not defined in our routes, so we need to go ahead and define that. So we're going to say get menu, and we're going to route that again to the same controller, this time the menu action. So we define menu here, great. We define the route here, and now let's update the link. So on the index page, right now we're taking us to the contact us path. Let's go ahead and take us to the menu path. Fantastic. So now that we're here, we seem to have trouble with our nav bar. Application.js looks good. Oh, there's a CSS file. That's right. We actually saved the old one. Cool. All right. Great. So now we click menu. It'll say unknown format in menu. It's missing a template. So it found the controller, it found the route, but it's actually missing the view to return back to it. So we need to go ahead and create that view. So we'll say app views layouts. If we look at it, we'll see all the different partials and stuff that we have. And so we want to go to the home because our action is in the home controller. And we'll see here there's 2 views. There's a contact us view and there's an index view. And so we're going to go ahead and we want to create the menu view, which is menu.html.erb. Fantastic. We'll save this. We'll go ahead and just start giving it just enough to know that we're here. And now we find the menu. Great. So let's go back to our README, and we've officially completed the first task. And so now we want to navigate to the page, and we need to display the sections we have, right? So we've created these sections in our database. They exist, but we've yet to show them in on the view. So let's go to our view page, right? Right now it's just the menu, and it has no information in any of the sections yet in the controller. So here we have our action control the menu, right? We need to actually start passing these sections back to the view so that the view has a way to show them. So we're going to say sections equals section.all. And this is using active record. So .all essentially will say, select star from sections. It's going to say, give me all the tables, from that table, give me all the rows that you have. And we'll assign that to this variable at sections, which is an instance variable, which the view then knows how to access. If we were to say something, like this, the view wouldn't be able to access it. So if we define it as an instance variable on the controller, then the view has access to it. And so we'll say at sections equals section.all. Great. We have 4 sections in the database. We want to show those all to the view to show. And so if we get to our view, we're going to need to show those. And so we're going to actually call some Ruby code here, and we'll say at sections.each do, and what we have a section, right? Great. And we are going to want a button for each section, right? So we're going to say section.name, because that's really what the name is, and then we're going to give it a class as well. Great. So now, great. We have basic links here that take us to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it looks like I defined my classes wrong because it's passing them in as a parameter. I didn't tell it where to route to. So we're going to tell it to route back to the menu path, and we're going to pass in a parameter, section, and we're going to say section.id. So now we have our menu, and it'll throw an error on us because I forgot the comma. We'll add the comma back in, and we'll come back. And what's nice about this error console, it really tells you exactly what the line is that's wrong, and it even opens up an interactive console here. And so if you wanted to say, what's at sections, it's nil. Pretty handy to kind of debug things. Great, so now we have our menu, we have some buttons, and if we click on one, it'll append up here. It'll append to the top up here a query parameter, right? Section equals 1. And so if we click on each one, it'll change it, right? Section 1, 2, 3, 4, which is great. It's passing it up. It's really actually a section ID, though. So we're going to rename the parameter as a section ID. And that way, when we start clicking on things, it'll change it to section ID. Great, right? So if we click on a button, it takes us to a new, passes up a new request with some new parameters. Let's make it a little nicer, though. So we'll say div class equals button group. Right, just add a little more formatting in. And now it kind of just looks a little nicer. But it's kind of weird because if you click on something, it kind of doesn't really tell you what you've clicked on, right? Like you click on it, it's highlighted, and then it kind of goes away. So let's go ahead and actually make it so it stays highlighted. And so what we want to do is active, but if we just add active there, it's going to make all of them active, right? All of them all of a sudden show up with that CSS. So we need a little bit of logic to actually show us which one is active. So we're going to go ahead and use our Ruby helper. Right, so we have here, which we define as active. I'm going to say it's active if params, and what's the name of the param we're looking at? Well, the param is section ID, right? Because that's the one we're passing up here. If the param section ID equals section.id. And so if we refresh, didn't catch. Params section ID equals section ID. Let's inspect it. It's not seem to be active. Sorry guys, can't seem to get this one to work, but it looks good to me. It's one of those times when the magic comes through and you think you know what's going on, and okay, I'll figure out what's going on and I'll let you guys know what the update is. The other way we could do that, a lot of times I said there's many ways to do things in Rails, is we say, all right, button, and then we'll say, let's use the ternary operator, which is for threes. So section ID equals section.id, right? If that's the case, then what? Then we'll say, all right, let's go ahead and say, make it the primary button. Otherwise, we'll make it secondary, right? And so we have our condition here, which is param section ID equals section ID. If it's true, add in the first one. Otherwise, add in the second. And we'll see if that works. And it is not. Error messages here. Yeah. Maybe it's caching it. Can't get this one to work. All right. Yeah, we'll move on and I'll figure out what happened and let you guys know. Alrighty. The final thing is, so we have our nav bar here. If we wanted to go back, right now it doesn't do much. It's a dumb nav bar. So we just wanted some navigation. So we'll go back to our nav bar. Take it back to the root path. Right, you do root path. Because again, we've defined the root path as one of our routes. Or you just do slash. And now we're back to our main page. Cool. All right, so now we have our basic menu. We have a contact us page. Fantastic. We go to the menu. Now it's starting to actually show some of the things in our database, right? We've queried it. We've returned it. The view looks at it. And is passing it up as a parameter up here in the top. Great. So let's go ahead and commit all that. Oops, I enabled caps lock. So we've done a bunch of stuff with adding in the section model. We'll add it all. We'll give it a commit message. Add section model. Great. Cool. Let's go back to our README and see what we've done. Cool. So now we have the next part done, right? The user can navigate to a menu page with 4 sections, and we've added in breakfast, lunch, dinner, and drinks. And the next task is to see at least 5 food items in each section, right? And so that suggests a relationship between the food item and the section. And we have 4 sections. Each section needs 5 food items. And so that means that the section will have many food items, and the food items will belong to sections, right? And these are terms that Rails actually recognizes as relationship terms between them. So we need to create this food item, which then will be used to show on the section page. So we're going to say Rails generate And before we did Rails generate model, right? And actually this time we're actually say Rails generate scaffold. And scaffold is very powerful. It generates not only our model and our view for us, but also a bunch of controllers and controller actions. The downside is it does a lot of stuff for you, which can be complex, but in this case we actually want to use it, and we actually want it to do a bunch of work for us. So we're going to generate the scaffold. We're going to call it food item. You can even call it food item. Rails is smart enough to know how to handle it. And we're going to want a name on it. And actually, if we look at the README here, it tells us what fields we want. So we want a name, we want a description, and the description actually wanted to be a text field because text doesn't have a fixed length, whereas string does in the database. So we'll say a text. We need some sort of price. It could be an integer, but we actually want it to be a decimal because prices can have decimals. And the final thing is the food item belongs to a section, right? So we could say Section.id and give it an integer, right? And use that as a foreign key, so it points in the database to the section. But Rails also knows how to handle that again. So we can just say section and references. And so we'll go ahead and run that. And it'll create for us a bunch of files this time, including our migration files and our data and our model. Some controllers, a bunch of views for different actions, some helpers. Great. So let's once again inspect the migration. And here we have food items with our tables. Great. And you see here references section, foreign key, true, right? And if we look at food item, it'll have this line that says belongs to a section. And that makes it really easy to query. It creates that relationship between the food item and the section. And so you can then find a section from the food item really easily. So now we have that created. Let's go ahead and run our DB migration, Rails DB migrate. Great. And if we go back, now we're not going to see anything because we haven't created any food items yet. But we haven't added a route. But let's just say we go to food items. It's going to show us, because it created for us a controller and a view, what food items are existing in the database. And as you can see, we have none right now. So let's go ahead and create one. And again, all this was generated by the Rails scaffold. It does allow for us, and so it created this view and this action. And this is the new action, right? So it created for us a name. So I'm going to say like a taco, description, food in a hard shell, some price. We'll put it in dong, so we'll say 10K. But now it asks for a section ID. Oh, I mean, this is a reference, right? It references an existing section in the database. And so it really isn't useful to have it to be, just a text field, because then we can look up the section ID and go find it. So let's modify it and make it so it's a little easier. So this is the new food item, right? This is the view that comes with it. It says render form food item. And so we're going to go ahead and modify this form, which it uses as a partial. So app views layouts, app view food items, and we'll see here there's a form, and the form has defined all the different fields, right? So we have a name field, we have description, we have price, we have section ID, and right now it's a text field. Let's go ahead and change that to be a select, so it's a section ID, and I believe then we got to pass in all of the existing section IDs. You got to pass it in as such, so x.name, x.id, which is just a pair and an array of the name and the ID. So knows how to handle it. Unexpected keyword. So apologies, guys. Say it again. It's offset. Should what?
Options param. I don't know how.
Like that? Sorry. Options for a sec. Again, apologies, guys. We'll keep it a text field for now. I'll post what the command is. Seem to not remember this one. Sorry, guys. All right, so we know we'll just add this show 10, and we'll add it to because we know that 2 was lunch. So great. So now we have food item was successfully created. We can edit it if we want, and all this is provided to us by the scaffold. Go back and look at it. We see, great, we have one. We'll go ahead and create just one more, just so we have one more. And we'll add that one to dinner. Great. So now we at least have 2 food items. We've added one to lunch and one to dinner. And so if we wanted to start to display these, we could display them on the menu page. So we'll go back to home, we'll go to menu, right? And so now the goal is to show these. So if we click on one of these components, right, it'll show that on the coordinating part. So if we click on lunch, it will show the food items associated with lunch. Click on drinks, right, the food items associated with drinks. So we're going to go back to our menu page, right, which is here. And so we have access to all the sections, but now we really want to know the section that we've clicked on. And so in our controller, we'll say if params Section.id .present. And present is kind of a nice helper provided to us by Rails. It's similar to saying if, params Section.id not nil. So, right, not only is it not nil, but it's also present. Right? It's similar to saying that. So it's saying, does it exist and does it actually have a value? And so we can say .present, it's nice Rails helper. And then if it does, we'll say, all right, the current section we're on, right, equals section.find, and we'll pass in that parameter. So we'll say section ID. And now the view will have access to the current selection. So if we pull up that page, we can say at current section, right? And we can say dot food items dot each, and here we have an item. Great, so we have the item and we want to display it. So for now, we'll just say pretty quickly just to show what it looks like. All right, say item.name, and we'll just give it a price. And so we could just say item.price. That'll just format it exactly how it's given to us from the database. We can use a Rails helper, so we can say number to currency, and we'll pass it in the price. And if we refresh, we get a no method error. Undefined method food items for section, right? So if we look at our model, we go to food item, it says belongs to section, but if we look at section, it doesn't have the inverse of that. So we have to say has many, and we say food items. By doing that, it gives us the ability to query directly, so we can say, section.food items, which is what the menu is doing. So if we look at the home controller, right? Look at the view, right? This syntax right here, dot current section, dot food items. we couldn't do that before because we didn't specify that relationship on the section model. Now that we specify that on the section model, we can query it as such, and now it'll give us our dinner and our lunch, and it actually also prints out the entire object, and that's because .each returns the value of the array itself. And so we're actually going to do, yeah, there it is. I always, thanks, Lauren. Great. So now we have just, basic formatting, the food that's associated with dinner. If we click on lunch, right, we'll see the food items associated with lunch. And so we've identified, base up here, right, the section ID is being passed to the server. The server identifies which is the right section and passes that down, and then we'll be able to display those food items with just very basic formatting. So that, looking at the README, right, very basically, you can see, you can filter by the section and see only the relevant items. Does that make sense to everyone, how we've defined the relationship between the section and the food items? So the section can have many food items, and by specifying this line here, we can query it directly on the section. And similarly, on the food item, we have food item belongs to section. So if we wanted to, we could say, all right, give me some food item. All right, just give me the first one. Great. And food item, right, has a section ID, which we see here. And so rather than, we could say, all right, give me the section ID, then give me the section that corresponds to that, right? But that takes a few commands. You could also just say, give me the food item and give me its section. And Rails knows, because of that relationship, how to get it directly, right? It produces that line for the database query, which is give me the section where the ID is to. And that because it knows how to find that from the model itself. All right. So that about wraps up the time we have today. I'll clarify the things, all the rest of it online, and I'll post all the slides and all these lectures online. Hopefully that gives you a lot to work with for week 1. And we'll stick around to answer any questions. But thanks, guys. That concludes the end of our first lecture.